Thank you very much for joining us from Ramallah. I just asked here my Israeli guest about if it was a mistake to trust Arafat, but maybe I should be asking you about Palestinians trusting Israelis.
Well, I am not against anybody trusting anybody. The question here is whether Israel was really ready for a solution. And the whole Oslo agreement was based on two assumptions. One assumption that Israel is ready to accept two-state solution, which means a compromise, a historical compromise. And the other assumption was that the United States can be a decent and honest broker. I think both of these assumptions became wrong. Israel never accepted a Palestinian statehood in principle, although it would have been only in 22% of the land, which is less than half of what Palestinians should have had according to UN resolution. And the Americans never were honest brokers. They were always biased to the Israeli side. And I think these are the two factors that led to very serious failure of Oslo Agreement, which was imbalanced anyhow in the beginning. Because Palestinians recognized Israel as a state. Israel never recognized Palestine as a state. All they recognized is PLO as a representative. Palestinians, unfortunately, accepted to sign an agreement without insisting on stopping all settlement activities. The result is what you see today, the practical elimination of any possibility of a Palestinian state.
Okay, I want to bring in again Avigdor Kahalani, and Avigdor, I want to show you something that was, I want to read out actually something that was said by Joel Zinger. He is a legal advisor, he was a legal advisor to Prime Minister Rabin on the Accords, and he said that one of the mistakes he regrets is not freezing settlements in the West Bank. He says it was a serious mistake to permit the settlements to continue to race ahead at even an accelerated pace, because all of a sudden Oslo started the clock running and caused the settlement movements to quickly begin to take over land before a permanent agreement. A dynamic was created that translated into the need to quickly settle every hilltop, because very soon, in another 5 years, the borders would be set. That was a long-term mistake. Avigdor, was that the long-term mistake, not to freeze the settlements back then?
No, I think it's the first agreement. It was the decision to evacuate our forces from the main towns in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria. But nobody talked about the final agreement between them and us. And the final agreement, that the big issue was Jerusalem, the right of return, the border, the water problem, and of course all those problems, they put it on the side, and they have decided not to work in. And we didn't know what Mr. Rabin is mean and Mr. Peres, what in their mind about the future of this agreement. The moment that we realized, I'm talking about the Labour Party in 1992, 1993, the platform of the Labour Party, that we have decided not to touch the settlement and not to move from Jordan River. I was the man that they sent me during the campaign to stay near the Jordan River, not to move from there. And we found, after we signed, we found so many bombs in the street in Israel, many buses exploded all over the country.
We're going to talk about that.
And I remember that I was sitting with Mr. Rabin, and I talked with him personally, and at that time a big bus exploded and more than 20 people in the middle of Jerusalem. After he signed the agreement,
that's when the terror wave started.
It was very, very disappointing.
Okay. Gilad, you wanted to respond, I think, to something that...
I beg to differ with several statements of
Mustafa
previous
Barghouti?
guests. Yes,
okay,
you know,
go ahead.
Israel from the outset was... and I believe that in the last 40 years, not only 25 years, Israel is prepared to disengage from the Palestinians and have a coexistence with a border between the two. Israel accepted in December 2000 the Clinton parameters that do provide for the division of the land according to that. And it also offered in 2008 to then Chairman and still Chairman Abbas a map and a full package that would have structured this two-state for two-people solution. And of course, the answer that we got then and still now is we'll get back to you, with that.
Simcha, both you and both Avigdor mentioned the wave of terror that happened afterwards. I think the number you said was 1,500 people. But
the 15 years after Oslo.
Yes, but if the Oslo Accords weren't signed, would there not have been any terror anyway?
So the comparison is, in the 15 years before Oslo Accords, there were less than 300 casualties from terror attacks. In the 15 years after, almost 1,500. So we're talking about numbers. It's a big difference. And of course, once Israel basically negated the agreements and took over the control, and now the Israeli army can go and take any terrorist that he finds, even if it's within Ramallah, even if it's within Shechem, the security is within IDF hands. So that changed, and the second that changed, we already saw a very big decline in terror. But I think the terror is not the reason Oslo failed. Oslo failed because it was based on immorality. The immorality that I said before, to bring terrorists and murderers and give them control over population, and the immorality of what he said, what Barghouti said. Mustafa Barghouti said, Mr. Barghouti said. He said, settlements are a problem. In Israel, in the Jewish state, there are Arabs living. The fact that a person that says that he's against terror and is against violence says in the Palestinian state has to be Judenrein, and I'm using this term with full understanding what it means. Jews cannot live in the Palestinian state. And this is immoral. And this is immoral.
This is immoral. Let's let Mustafa Barghouti respond to all of those accusations. And also, did Oslo make it easier? I think what Simcha is saying, did Oslo make it easier for terrorists to act?
Well, I think I have to tell you that, unfortunately, all Israeli politicians are either blunt, extreme racists or confused. Because they speak about Palestinians murdering Israelis. How many people were murdered by Israelis? I think if you count the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli army is way much more than the number of Israelis killed by Palestinians. I don't want any Palestinian or any Israeli to be killed. But you can't accuse one side of being terrorists, murderers, and then speak about making peace with them. The big and very clear question here is as follows. Either Israel is ready to accept us as equal human beings or not. If we are equal human beings, then we can have a solution in two states formula, in which case you cannot say that we will have a state in the West Bank and continue to build settlements in it. You are undermining the goal. So to say that Palestinians can or maybe can have a state, but we still continue to build settlements is nothing but hypocrisy. If you don't want Palestinians to have a state of their own, fine. Then let's live together in one state solution with equal rights, which means I could run to be your prime minister. If this is equality.
Okay, well, first here,
but you
here
want
in the studio, they're saying,
have Israel as only Jewish state, and that Palestinians should disappear from this world, this will not happen.
Okay, I want to bring in Avigdor Kahalani before we go for our break. Avigdor, I want to talk quickly, really briefly, also about the assassination of Prime Minister Rabin. Many people say that was the final nail, in the coffin of this peace process, that nothing could advance after that. Would you agree?
I really don't know what was in his mind at that time. I know that when he brought the agreement to the Knesset, it was a smile that the smell is going to give them more opportunity to get more of the area, and without any solution and without any hope. And I've heard what they are talking now about the future agreement between them and us. Nobody will change the situation and move the settlement from Judea and Somalia. They will stay forever over there. But why the people in al-Fahim can live in Israel, and why the people in Bet El and Ma'ale Adumim and Ariel cannot live in a state of... I agree about the two states. I think the idea to divide the area between the two states is okay. But the settlement, they will stay there forever, and this is the solution. Why they don't agree that we have Israeli and Jewish state? Why we have to agree that they will build a Palestinian state? What is the agreement? What is the honor between the two nations? What we are talking about.
Gilad, would you agree, at least, what was your thoughts about the Rabin murder? Was that the end of it before we go for our break really quickly?
It was a big, very big, major blow to the process altogether, understandably so, but not the only one.